Creating a time-lapse may seem like a difficult task, but with today's cameras, editing software, and even smartphones, you can shoot and edit time-lapses in just a few short hours with relative ease. However, just because it's easy does not mean it's going to automatically look good. That's why you should learn the basic steps on how to shoot a time-lapse. The most important thing you need for a time-lapse is a camera, obviously. I recommend using either a quality DSLR or smartphone that has manual controls, because the more control and resolution you have over your image, the more creative you can be in post-production. The goal with the time-lapse is to repeat the same frame over and over again over time. Any bumps or changes in composition are instantly noticeable, so use a solid tripod or mount to help keep your frame stable and consistent. An intervalometer takes automatically timed photos for you, so you won't have to touch your camera once the time-lapse begins or manually time your shots out. Some cameras have built-in intervalometers, some have app controls, and there's even firmware you can install on certain cameras, but if yours doesn't come with it, it's wise to purchase one. Make sure your media cards in your camera and hard drives on your computer are large and fast enough to handle high-quality stills without much lag. Neutral density filters work great in bright environments, allowing you to drag or slow down your shutter to soften or blur fast-moving objects. Calculating your time-lapse isn't always necessary, but it's always helpful. To know how many photos you need to take for your time-lapse, simply multiply your frame rate by the number of seconds of footage you want, giving you the total number of frames you need to capture on your shoot. To calculate the time needed between photos on longer shoots, like for a day-to-night transition or a flower growing from seed, change your overall shooting time into seconds and then divide it by the total number of frames you want. That's how long you need to wait between each photo, giving you the desired number of frames. Typically, there's going to be a lot of change in exposure as you're shooting a time-lapse, so you'll want to keep your settings on manual to minimize how much it affects your images and avoid any flickering. Manually set your focus, ISO, white balance, aperture, and shutter speed to your desired look. A slower or dragged shutter looks better with fast-moving objects like people or cars, and a faster shutter usually looks better with slow-moving objects like clouds, snails, or flowers opening. Shoot at the largest file format you can, especially if you can shoot RAW images. RAW files give you unlimited control in post-production, but it can cause some camera lag and take up a ton of space, so plan for that. Now that you've done the math and dialed in your camera settings, it's time to actually shoot. Pick an interesting subject and an interesting angle, and take a few test shots to give you an idea of what your video is going to look like. Once you've locked down your frame, begin your time-lapse. Periodically check on your camera's frame every few minutes to make sure your battery is good, your card isn't full, and the camera hasn't moved, unless there are dolly tracks and slider systems on the market that can add movements like tilts, pans, and tracking to your shots, giving your time-lapse dynamic 3-axis movements and increasing your video quality. The other way to add motion is to do it in post-production. With basic keyframing, you can scale, rotate, or reposition the video to add movement. There are two main types of workflows when editing your time-lapse in post. One way is to edit one photo from your time-lapse in a program like Adobe Lightroom, batch apply that look to all the other photos in your time-lapse, and then export all the photos to a new folder. Then you import that photo sequence into Adobe Premiere Pro for any additional adjustments before you export. This method gives you more control over your images, especially if you shoot RAW. You can also skip Lightroom altogether and instead import the original image sequence into a program like Adobe After Effects as one video file. You can then just color correct and apply effects to the entire video clip before exporting. A large part of mastering the time-lapse is by failing. You can learn infinitely more by experimentation, and it'll help you hone your craft and become a better artist in the long run. Try out as many different angles, camera settings, and subjects as possible and see what's best for your workflow and style. If you like this video and want to see more tutorials, including how to shoot a hyperlapse, check out our YouTube channel and subscribe. You can also read an in-depth time-lapse tutorial and other filmmaking tips on the Pond5 blog. And as always, head over to pond5.com to get thousands of time-lapse videos to use in your next project.